So I just went through and showed you how we configured our system, and now I'm going to show you our components list. So based on our calculated usage, we decided we needed about 400 watts, and in order to get that we needed 16 400-watt panels. You can get panels in all different sizes and wattage outputs. I like to go with the little higher wattage panels, just because you end up with fewer panels and just less connections to mess with. And so 400-watt panels are pretty good size. They make, I think they're coming out with 550-watt panels here pretty soon. We just took the 6,400, divided it by 400 watts, and we came up with 16 panels. We ended up buying those from a little outfit in Arizona. Was the best deal we could find on those. Went and picked those up, and they were $175 each, which is a fantastic deal. I want to show you a little bit about the solar panels that we bought. We ended up buying them from Santan Solar. This is a really good place to buy solar panels. They had some really great deals. They are in Gilbert, Arizona, near Phoenix, and had a great experience dealing with them, and they have some really great deals. I was looking back through here to see if they still have the 400-watt Trinas that we bought from them. It looks like they're all sold out, but they do have something similar that I'll show you, which is a 405-watt Trina. And these look exactly like ours. Trina is a great brand. 400 watts, a pretty good sized panel. It's also monocell, which is considered a higher quality or a better, more efficient quality of cell. So mono is good. That's what these are, is high efficiency, half cell PERC monocrystalline cells, which is great high quality solar panels that we were able to get, here in the U.S. We didn't have to ship these in from China, which was nice. We just went down to Gilbert and picked these up on our trailer. We decided that 13.8 kilowatt hours would be enough storage for us. That would probably be enough to get us through 2 or 3 days without any solar power at all if we were conservative with our electricity, and I figured that was enough. We went with the 3.2 volt, 280 amp hours, or 272 nominal amp hour LiFePO 4 batteries, a 48 volt system, and so we needed 16 of those. So 16 times 3.2 gets you that 51 volts or 48 nominal. We were able to get a great deal on those on Alibaba, and with shipping included to my door, 86 bucks each, which is a smoking deal. A really good deal on 13.8 kilowatt hours. That's an amazing deal. Also, a little bit about the LiFePO 4. Basically, it's a lithium iron phosphate battery. So these are really great batteries. They have a wide span of usage, which means you can draw them down pretty low. And then they also are good for many, many, many cycles, up to 5,000 cycles, which is really high for a battery. So they have a very long life, and you can use a bigger part of the total capacity of the battery. So it's great technology. So we're getting like cutting edge technology for a total of $13,086 bucks. Smoking deal. The next we have a BMS system, which I got on AliExpress. It's a Heltec 150 amp, so it's very beefy, very big, very very heavy duty BMS system for $195. Just need one of those. And then we got two of the Must is the brand out of China. 2 MPPTs, and they're 100 amps, so that's a heavy duty controller. It's going to have really heavy duty internals, heavy duty wiring, and should last a long time. And so those were 163 each, and that's with shipping included, all right to my door. And then the 6,000 watt inverter, big beefy inverter. It's the split phase, which is, like I say, you need that for power in the US if you want to be able to use 110 appliances and 220 appliances. Really recommend you go with the split phase. This is also a low frequency inverter, which means that basically, when an electric motor starts up, it has a higher draw than when it's running, and so you get these peaks of power needs that are brought on by appliances starting up. And a low frequency inverter can produce higher wattages for a longer period of time than the high frequency inverters are. And so they're generally more substantial and just better for those high spikes that you get with motor startups when you're running heavy appliances. So really recommend the low frequency. It's also a pure sine wave, which means it's real clean and efficient power. So it's looks like a great inverter. I was actually looking on the site. These are 100 pounds each, so it should be quite the piece of equipment. So the controller and the inverter are both must power systems. And so here is the low frequency pure sine wave split phase inverter charger that we went with. It's a 6,000 kilowatt. And so I've read some good things about these inverters. They seem like they're really well made and well built. And so here's the must web page that gives you the details of the inverter. And so what I did is I went here first and just researched on their webpage, the exact model that we needed to buy, and studied the details. You can go into the technical data, and it gives you all the good stuff here. So mine is the very furthest one over here, the biggest one. It shows, for instance, what the peak surge rating is. I was telling you. So this one, normally a 6,000 volt inverter, will go up to 18,000 for that momentary surge. So it can go up to triple the amount of capacity for a brief period of time if it needs to, when a motor starts. And so this one can handle up to a 3 horsepower motor, which is a huge, huge motor. You can see here it requires 48 volt DC to the battery, and so that's why we designed a 48 volt DC. And it just gives you a bunch of other useful and interesting information here. Find what you want, study and research the product, and then go about trying to figure out where the best place to buy it is. Here's another must product that we bought. These are our solar charge controllers. This was I got the PC 1800F series. So this is for a completely off the grid home. It also allows you to switch over to a generator. So it's a great product. Also made for 14 volt battery usage. And you got all the specs here. So this is the one I settled on, and this is where I bought my BMS from. This is the exact one that Purple Alien Planet recommended, and I looked at it and I compared it with several others, and this was the best deal I could find too. I actually looked on the DIY solar forum and looked at some of the other ones that were popular on there, but I still ended up with this one. It looks to be a great quality. You can get it in different amp capacities. I went ahead and went with the 150 amp because it seemed like that would definitely be all I need. And it was still a very reasonable price. I ended up paying $195, and that was shipping and everything included for this BMS. So it's a good, high-quality BMS that handles high amperage, big, heavy duty. Something you notice from the picture is that you have the BMS itself, and then you have your input and output lines, and then you have these smaller wires. I'm building a 48 volt system, so it has 16 batteries that are all connected in series. And this BMS will connect to each one of those individual packs. And so here's the little battery harness so I can run wires to each one of my individual 16 batteries. And that's what the 24 right here in the description means, is that it'll do up to 24 in series. I only need 16, it'll work fine. And then we figured there'll be another $500 in just kind of incidentals, breakers, inline fuses, some additional wiring, that kind of stuff, odds and ends. And so total is right around $5,700. Once you decide what you want to buy, and if you decide to go with a company like Must or companies that build their products in China or overseas, you're going to need to find a place to buy them. There are a few places you can buy stuff in the U.S., but they tend to be really pricey, and I just didn't want to spend that kind of money. And so I got to looking at places to buy products overseas. And I landed on Alibaba as being, the best choice of a place to go in order to get these products. And to give you an idea of the price difference that I'm talking about here, so this controller, a 100 amp MPPT controller with, for a 48 volt system, I paid $163 each for these, shipped to my door, shipping included, tax, title, everything all included, $163. The inverter I paid $510 for on Alibaba. An equivalent good, quality, heavy duty, split phase, low frequency, pure sine wave inverter might be $6,000, 10 times the cost. And so I wasn't willing to pay that. And so I had to look for other means, and Alibaba was the solution for us. A couple important notes. First of all, I just want to say that I have nothing against, the American-made products or, products from American suppliers. I'm sure they're very good, and in fact, if price wasn't a problem, I would go that route, but I honestly just couldn't afford them and had to find another way. The second thing I want to mention is that I am not a professional, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an electrician, and so I'm just telling you how I did it. Take from that what you will, but I'm not recommending what you should do. And please, before you make any decisions or take any actions, consult a true professional, which I am not.
Our order arrived while we were in Arizona working on our off-grid property. Our son had to quickly bring them inside when he discovered them piled on the front porch as he was leaving for work. This shipment came from China and took about 2 months to get here.
So this is our second box of charge controllers that we got in. Ordered 7, which is, we needed 6 for our systems, and I needed 1 to get 1 extra. So one box had 5 in it, this box has the other 2. This box is pretty badly damaged in the corner, but fortunately it was the corner with the foam in it, and looks like they came out pretty well unscathed, although this box was kind of open, and so I was going to take it out and see how it looks. These are smaller than I imagined, but they, I guess, look as pictured. I don't see any obvious damage to this unit. It got some weight to it, some substance. Feels like there's some pretty heavy electronics in there. So overall, we have our controllers came through pretty well undamaged. We had a couple of the inverter boxes that were pretty badly damaged. This one right here was really squished on one side. The whole middle was just all crushed in. And there's no foam there, so we were pretty worried. The case doesn't seem to be dented or scratched or anything. But this case had buckled a little bit and kind of popped out, kind of came apart a little bit and broke a seal that says void if opened. Fortunately, we did order an extra inverter. So we ordered 4 and I only needed 3. So if we had to send one back, it wouldn't be catastrophic. Here's the other one. This box was actually completely, one end was completely ripped off. And so we opened it up and it actually doesn't look too bad. Amazingly, the inverter seemed to survive very well. These are big, heavy inverters. So we'll have to do some testing to see if they're functioning properly. I'm not sure if we'll be filing a claim with Alibaba or not, but not super happy with the way these arrived, but fortunately it does look like at least 3 of them are in pretty good condition. So these 3 boxes right here should be our solar connectors and wire. So I'm about to open up the top one. The 2 are, you can tell the boxes are pretty scrunched, and they're real heavy, but it's just wire, so you can't really hurt it. But I'll open those up. But this one on top, I think, is going to be my solar connectors. Well, it looks like it's rattled around a little bit, but I don't see anything that's particularly damaged. These are some crimping tools and stuff that I bought for making the connections, for connecting the wire, for cutting the wire, for dealing with it. Some specialty tools for dealing with that wire cabling. And then it looks like underneath here are the bags of the actual connectors. This one is split open a little bit, and you can see this is 1/2 of a coupling, it looks like. And so about all kinds of couplings and 3-way adapters. And these little numbers are, can be, $5 to $10 a piece if you buy them here in the U.S. and for just a fraction of that cost from overseas. So that all looks good. I don't think any of those are damaged. This could have been packaged a little bit better, but it all looks okay. And here's the box of one of the boxes of wiring. I bought a package of black wire and one of red. A bit of wire, as I recall. I don't remember exactly how many meters, but that's very heavy. So that's the red wire I bought, and then I have one the same size as the black wire. That's a whole lot of wire, my friends. And so this is what I'll be using to build 3 solar systems for 3 houses. Okay, so I'm getting ready to test out these inverters. The packages were damaged in shipping, and the cases show some damage on these 2 units. So I'm going to test them. And to do that, I'm going to have to unpackage 16 of the batteries, connect them, and then wire them up to my inverter. I'll do it through a breaker, and then I'll test on the output side and see if it works. Particular one just had some damage to the mounting bracket part of the case, and then also, I don't know if you can hear this, but there's something's loose on the inside. You can hear that? So I'm going to be breaking the seal, but that's why, is because I have to take the top off to see what's loose and rattling around in there before I start it up. Okay, so I've just removed the top off of this one, and I'm inspecting for physical damage on the internals. I don't see anything major so far, just on kind of first inspection. Okay, I think we figured out what was making the noise rattling around in there. It's a nut for the back of this piece, which is kind of a clamp for the wire that it came with, and the nut that came off on the inside. I've checked all the connections and made sure they're all tight. Everything looks good. I don't see any obvious damage on the inside, but we'll know, of course, as soon as I get the batteries connected to it. But I do want to say that everything looks really beefy, and it looks well made. I mean, this is, like I say, it's extremely heavy. It's over 100 pounds. It feels very substantial. Things put together in a very robust fashion, so, you know, so far so good. We'll see how it works. Alright, I just wanted to show you unpacking these batteries. They came packed really well. Like I say, protected corners. Opening this up, there's a little package that contains the bolts and the bus bars. So here's what the bus bars look like. Each battery comes with 4 bus bars and 4 bolts. And I had to ask for that specifically, so that's something you'll want to ask for, especially when you buy the batteries. So anyway, you pull off this top piece of foam, and then you can look down in there. They're encased completely in this styrofoam that's cut specially to fit the batteries. And I can pull off this top piece and get to the batteries here. And you can see the hole that they came out of, so they're completely encased in this foam. As far as the batteries and how they look, you know, they look just fine. One thing I noticed about them is that they don't have the traditional black and red for positive and negative. They got black and gray. So these all look real good. This is where I bought them from, Shinsan Basin Technology. They were great to work with. I would highly recommend them, and if I go to buy some more batteries, I'll probably go to them first. So far so good on these batteries. I'll check voltage, and then I'll start connecting them to get ready to test my inverter. So I've connected these together in series configuration, 16 batteries. So the series configuration will multiply your voltage, the 3.2 volts each. And so I've put them all together in series and tested it by connecting to the positive on one side and the negative on the other side. And I'm getting 52 volts, which is at the low end of the charge. So they are charged, but it's at the low end of the safety range. I think I can go ahead and use them just to test the inverter. One more thing I wanted to note here is I was going to put these, instead of 16 in a row, which is almost 4 feet wide. These batteries are huge. I was going to stack them 8 and 8, so like bring this block down and over here. But the bus bar would have to come from one of these connection points all the way to the other one, and the bus bars aren't long enough. I assume that they would be, but they're not. So it's good to know that so that I can get some new bus bars before I actually assemble these. Okay, so here's my setup. I have the batteries connected in parallel. I tested the voltage. I'm at 52 volts. On these, the black rubber terminal is positive, and the gray terminal there is negative. Definitely want to make sure you get those straight. I've got those coming into a breaker. Then I have that connected to the lugs on the battery input side on the inverter. Those are good beefy lugs. I'm using a wire that's probably a little bit smaller than you would normally use, but this is just for a test purpose. I'll use much heavier wire when I install it permanently. I've also removed this cover so I can do some testing when I turn it on. Make sure we have 110 power coming out of the hot 1 and the hot 2 to make 220 power. I have a drill plugged in right there to the 110 outlet, so I can test it here pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the breaker and hit the on switch here on the inverter and see what happens. So the breaker is on. Turn on the on button, and this beauty has come to life. And I'm going to scroll through the menu a little bit, make sure the settings are okay. And then I'm going to try the drill. and see if that works, and then I'll check my voltage on the outlet side and make sure that's okay. So now I've gone through the parameters and I have it set up like I want it to. Something else I can show you real quick is on this case. It actually shows you all the parameters and what it means. I love that. It's like right on the case. Anyway, got it all set. Test out my drill here. It works. And I've already checked the voltage coming out of both poles, both of the hot poles, and both of those are working correctly. So, you know, from what I can tell, this inverter seems to be working properly. I have the second inverter here that came in a box that was damaged in shipping. There was a little bit of damage to the case. You can see where these, where it's popped out of the case there. Those should be going down into that bottom groove. So apparently at some point during shipping, this case was hit or took some torque, and those teeth popped out. It also broke this little seal that shows that there was, you know, considerable movement in the case, and then there's also some damage right here at the foot. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the internals and then hook it up and do my test on it. And, you know, this test isn't going to show me, you know, 100% functionality, but at least give me some idea if there's any, you know, major problem. Well, I have the second unit hooked up now to 120 volts, 60 hertz, and so I'm ready to do some testing. I've already checked the voltage on hot 1 and hot 2, the two poles, and it's putting out exactly 120 volts, so that's perfect. And now I'm going to just test its use real quick. This time, instead of using a drill, I'm going to use a little portable heater. I'm going to use a little bit more juice. It's working perfectly. At least that part of this thing seems to be working okay. And this inverter looks good. Well, with this most recent order from Alibaba, all the major components are now in. Those were the long lead time items. Ended up ordering from Alibaba, AliExpress, eBay, Amazon, and the ones from Alibaba were definitely the longest lead time items. So everything's finally come in and I'm ready to start assembling.